evening, and welcome to Beyond the Politics, our regular examination of the events happening right here in the Quinte region and the people who work so hard behind the scenes to make those events happen. I'm your co-host, Paul Martin. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, regular columnist for the Belleville Intelligencer, Colin Mackay.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the intro.
And our guest for this week, show number 4 in the series, is Ward 2 Councillor Paul Carr.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
We just finished up the capital budget, and that was one of the main things we wanted to talk to you about. So this is always one of the biggest enterprises or endeavors the city has to really tackle, which is to say, what are the nuts and bolts projects the city wants to do, as opposed to the operating budget, which is what are the day-to-day funding of city events. So talk a little bit about the capital budget. How did you think it went this year, and was it more challenging because of the atmosphere we're in?
No, it was felt like a normal budget, you know, in terms of the process and everything else. You know, we have an asset management plan, and we have over $1 billion worth of assets, you know, when you go right down to the road and the sidewalk and everything in between. And so, you know, our finance department does a fantastic job in tracking that stuff. And then each department director is good in terms of prioritizing projects and, you know, replacing things. We do some improvements. We've got some intersections that we need to improve. As we continue to grow as a community, our streets and some of our intersections aren't built for the traffic and the volume that we have. And so, you know, Bridge Street and Sydney Street is a prime example. And College. Proper turn lanes. Yeah, we've got to recalibrate the College and Sydney as well. And so there's some big projects there. About $5 million less than what we spent last year. But in terms,
you spent about what, 36 million, 36.1?
36.1, and we were almost 40 last year. We're using the same amount of tax revenue, about 5.9 million. Mm-hmm. And so because of that.
So that's direct taxation.
Yeah. So right now we're at zero for a tax increase. Now the operating costs are a different animal, and by the time you throw in collective agreements and things of that nature.
So could you talk a little bit about where the money comes from? You said 5.7 from direct taxation.
Yeah.
I know there's other places too, like
the
MAT tax, and anyways, I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, sure. So one of the biggest ones for road reconstruction, and so I'll give you an example of one that's already been budgeted for and is being executed now, is the City Street Bell Boulevard. That's $21 million, but that's not all tax money there. There's some government grants at both the federal and provincial level, but in addition to that, there's water and sewer and things of that nature.
So Keegan Parkway is going to get into that.
Yeah. So those water and sewer is user pay. Mm-hmm. So if you get a water and sewer bill, then you're contributing to that infrastructure. If you're a rural resident and you're on your own system, you don't pay for that. So the property taxes don't pay for that. So there's user fees. We get federal gas tax, provincial gas tax. Provincial gas tax goes to transit, and so we're buying some vending machines to allow people to buy passes. And that's included in some other...
There's advertising too.
Yeah, and some other electronic things like that to kind of modernize our transit service.
And there was a calming traffic signal. What's that?
Yeah, so I sit on our transportation committee, and so we've developed a traffic calming policy for the city. So that's speed bumps, that's...
slow people down.
Choke points, if you will, on a street, so you can actually, take a street and put the curbs out a little closer to the intersection, so it kind of slows people down. So we've developed the policy for the city, which then will direct staff to implement, and there's costs to that. So suddenly we want to put in speed humps around, say, a school in a 40 zone. There's money set aside to do that. So
what about municipal? Is it accommodation tax? Is that and the MAT tax?
Yeah.
Wasn't that where like the bleachers and some people didn't want? Anyway, I'll let you explain it.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of debate over. It's funny when you do a budget and you look at down the list of all the items, and there's $39 or $36 million, and you would never think that particular item in a $36 million budget.
I think it was $90,000 for the bleacher.
We debated a $90,000 bleacher issue. It was part of where the funding was coming from, and there was some, and I was one of them who didn't think that municipal accommodation tax, which should be for tourism generation, should come out and fund bleachers.
So is that tax basically collected from people that stay in hotels?
Yes.
Pretty much.
And Airbnbs.
Right. And so the debate, I think, was something to do with what should come from casino money, which is down considerably versus the MAT. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, so it came from, we ended up funding it from casino economic development, and but we don't fund money out of those casino reserves unless the money's there. So you talked about the fact that we're short.
Yeah, there's a lot less.
We don't spend money we don't have. So it has to actually be
In
in
the
the
bank
reserve account, then we spend it. Because if you go based on projected revenue, well, the casino, it's a ebb and flow because it depends on how much revenue they generate. So the last thing you want to do is say, well, we're going to get $4 million and we only get $3 million, but you've allocated money out. So it's got to be in the reserve account.
So now this will go, the capital budget being finalized, of course you can always tweak things. Those projects will go into tender, and then that'll be part of the operating budget discussion as far as the transfer goes when we get to the spring.
So if we transfer money, so when we get money in for casino revenue, and yeah, we're down probably about $2.5 million. We have applied to the province for a second round of COVID restart money, and we've included that total amount. We'll see what happens.
So would that money be put in a reserve fund?
Yeah, so the casino reserve, so last term we set up the reserves. That includes economic development, capital equipment, it includes social infrastructure. When we talk about funding a lot of our nonprofit organizations and things like that through our grant committee, it would come out of those funds. But those funds have been parked there from previous years.
And the fire department bought a few things as well. Is that in the capital budget, or is that more sort of an operating budget thing?
No. So anything like vehicles.
Because it's your equipment. It's your $1 billion equipment.
Yeah.
Right.
So that comes out of the capital. So
Okay.
and the casino reserves are spread out enough that kind of everything can get touched, and they're all discretionary. So we can decide how we want to spend the money. But anyway, the bleachers got bought or will be purchased. It was included in the budget. It's just going to come out of economic development.
Thank you, Paul Carr. Thank you, Colin. This has been Beyond the Politics, our examination of everything happening here in the Quinte region and the people behind the scenes who make it happen, brought to you, as always, by your TV Quinte.